Hello, thanks for watching us. It's good to see you. I put together a few designs for Christmas that might give you some inspiration. On all our front doors these days, we love to have a welcome ring. And of course, the continuous circle is a sign of everlasting life. I live in South Wiltshire, and so we have an abundance of wild clematis vine in the hedgerows. So I just gathered one really long piece, wound it round and round, and just attached it with a couple of cable ties. So I'm going to cut the end of the cable tie off. If I wanted a really simple welcome ring, I could just add a piece of ribbon in, and I think that will be simple enough. Very elegant and very simple. But I've got here some birch. And this birch has been dipped into sort of artificial snow. And it's wonderful in some ways because it looks terrific. Mind you, it continues to drip little bits absolutely everywhere as I work. I'm going to lay these over the top. They have a natural curve to them. And while I was out gleaning these materials from the hedgerows, I came across a fallen ivy, and look at this. I picked them because I just love the way that these branches curve and then turn back on themselves. So I thought they would be good in this as well. I'm going to lay those on the top too. There we go. And I'm going to catch all of that together with another couple of cable ties. That's much easier, you know, than trying to take a whole big bundle and try to hold handfuls of it, doing it in stages. Don't forget, just cut the ends of those cable ties off just to neaten them up. I've got here some painted oak, and I'm going to take some pieces of this, just snip it off. There we go. And this I can easily put just straight inside, tucking it into the gaps that I've created. If you've got thin stems, this will work. They'll just go in between the gaps, no problem. Next thing I'm going to do is take my ribbon bow. I've already made it up. I've tied it with a piece of wire, and that can just tuck into the top. Tuck that wire in. Fluff the bow out and take the streamers down. I came across these in my workroom. I've had them for ages. They're the sort of thing you think, well, you know, they'll come in useful one day. So they're just wired beads. And these too are thin enough to just poke inside and to stay where I want them to. If they're a little bit long, I can easily cut them off. So everything here is really long lasting and will last us all the way through the Christmas season. To hang down in the centre, I've got a piece of aluminium wire, and it's got test tubes wound into it, and then on each test tube just a snowflake, and these are easily available from lots of craft shops. That is going to hang straight down through the middle. Shorten the wire a little bit, and I can push that in between two of the branches. So that's what it looks like at the moment, as you can see. I could do with a little bit of visual weight into this area at the top. So for that, I've got some baubles which I've mounted onto kebab sticks. And I find the best way to do that with a kebab stick, you've got to be careful because you really don't want to break the top. So I put my finger on it, get the pointed end of the kebab stick, and don't push. Gently, continually twist until you're right in. There we go. That's nice and secure. The kebab sticks themselves are a little bit on the long side. So I'm going to cut those off. These are sort of a grey suede effect. And a couple more right into the centre. Last one. There we go. Are you going to stay? No, you're not. Find the gap in the twigs and we'll be absolutely fine. There we go. They might need just a dab of glue to keep them into place. And that's my near completed wreath. I say near complete because the last thing I have are some fresh roses to go into the test tubes. There's no water in it at the moment, but you know, they'll survive outside. Take a little bit off. In them already, I've got a little bit of this grey painted oak, which I find to be absolutely beautiful. This particular rose is white avalanche, and it is one of the most beautiful large-headed white roses. It seems to fit the bill anytime we need a good white rose. And those, of course, are not going to last through the whole of the Christmas season, but it's really easy to just renew that with any flower you like and ring the changes and just say to everyone, welcome to our home at Christmas. If you've got guests coming this Christmas, it's a nice idea to have some flowers to welcome them, or alternatively, you may be really lucky and they may bring you a gift of flowers. So I'm going to make a bunch of flowers for you. I've got here some Pittosporum, variegated Pittosporum, and some grey Eucalyptus gunnii. Nice contrast of colour between the two, the grey-green and the variegated Pittosporum. Really wouldn't be Christmas without a piece of holly in there as well. And for remembrance, a couple of pieces of rosemary. Now what you will notice is that all of the stems have already been stripped of all their foliage. That makes them much easier to work with. Here I've got some beautiful variegated fatsia leaves, and I'm going to use those at the base of this tied bunch and use them in a layered fashion, one on top of the other. But I don't want them really to sit directly on top, So I'm going to use a piece of beautiful small leaved grey hebe, which is just going to sit in the top above that one, so that this one can now be slightly distanced from the other one. Got slightly too much hebe there. Just going to get rid of a small amount. Just snip that into my box, out of the way. And now that one is sitting on the top, as you can see. Still got another piece which I'm going to bring onto the other side. Nice lot of movement in this bunch, particularly from the eucalyptus. To balance this large fatsia leaf on one side, I'm going to use some trailing pieces of Rubus tricolor. Now this is a member of the blackberry family, and it looks as if it's really prickly, doesn't it? But actually its prickles are really soft. Very shiny upper surface to the leaf and a delightful grey underneath. This is variegated box, which is going to tuck at the front. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm making a tied bunch, I find I normally have to start with some foliage before I can effectively add in some flowers. Beautiful white roses. These are again white avalanche. But I've also got one here, slightly different, with the tiniest touch of peach in it as well. I'm arranging these so that there is a bit of space between these lovely full-blown roses. So it's a spiraled, hand-tied bunch, just like a sheaf of corn or a bundle of pasta. I've been demonstrating for quite a long time, and when I first started we used to use a lot of artificial plant material. Well, these days, it's hard to get hold of, but just the tiniest hint of it these days is probably enough. I've already shown you how to mount some baubles onto kebab sticks, so they are going in as well, but being pushed in fairly deeply, and that gives me some recession into this bunch. You could leave it there, but I'd like a little bit of height into this, and so for that I have ornithogallum. Aren't they just beautiful, stately flowers? Originally from South Africa. They've got quite sort of slippery stems. So if I had started with these early on, it's quite possible that they would have twisted and moved. So that's the reason I've left them until the end. And just as I used a circular motion with the kebab sticks into the baubles, I'm using a circular motion just to add in these. And automatically, they're tending to go at slightly different angles with a bit of space between them. I'm really pleased that they're not just clustering themselves together in the middle. Here I've got some paper covered wire. I find this to be quite good for finishing off a tied bunch. You need to get it up as high as you can, because underneath my hand there is no foliage at all. And I've got those fatsia stems which are quite tough, and the stems around the edge of the flowers all have quite tough stems on that foliage, which means that this paper covered wire is not cutting into the soft stems. Pull it really tight and then I can just give it a twist. Not quite finished yet. The next thing I need to do is to just bring all those stems together and cut. And there we are. I need a container to put it in. I'll fill it up with water when I've finished. But the last thing to do, I've got some more of these snowflakes. And before we started, I just put a little dab of glue onto each one. And so they should just reflect a little bit of light. It also adds a bit of visual weight to the top. So there we go, a welcome for your hallway. Maybe you've got guests coming for Christmas lunch. And when I was looking for something suitable for a festive table, in one of the vintage shops in Salisbury where I live, I came across this. It's a 1970s punch bowl. So I thought, ideal. I've taken a plastic dish, I've got some wet foam in it, and I've glued some of those grey oak leaves all onto the outside. So first of all, straight into there, some more of this lovely painted oak. At the moment, this is really, really random, but it just adds in a bit of that grey colour into the centre. I've got some baubles as well, larger ones on sticks, but these small ones, I think they'll just push straight into the foam, just for a touch of sparkle. Some larger leaves of Fat's hedera, and this one is the cross between Fatsia, the huge leaves you saw a moment ago, and ordinary ivy. The unusual thing about it is that although it climbs, it doesn't have the suckers that ivy does. A very late flowering sedum, or actually, it's not a sedum anymore, you know. This is Hylotelephium, Hylotelephium gooseberry fool. And it tends to flower when all of the others have absolutely finished. So I'm making a tapestry effect in here, which I think the overhead camera is picking up rather nicely. Some foliages to go into here. First of all, a real flower arranger's favourite. This is Euonymus fortunei. This particular one is Emerald Gaiety. I've had this one in the garden for several decades now, and even though it's quite old, it's not huge, so it never gets to a huge height. And you probably know the unusual thing with Euonymus is that if you grow them next to a wall, they will automatically climb. Another delightful variegated shrub is this one. This is Myrtle, and you can see it's got its berries on it, which probably by Christmas will have turned a lovely shade of purple. And a nice story connected with Myrtle is that since the wedding of Victoria, Vicky, Queen Victoria's eldest daughter, her bouquet contained a piece of myrtle, and it was rooted, and since that day every royal bouquet has contained a piece of myrtle from that original plant, and it's grown at Osborne House on the Isle of Wight. Just using this bunchy foliage to fill in the gaps. This one has got a little bit limp while it's been sitting in the box, but it's Merubium. And when you read the older flower arranging books on foliages, it will tell you that this is a great shrub to grow in your garden because its leaves look as if they've been cut from sage velvet. Now, its common name in America is horehound. And if you've had cough medicine lately, then chances are that your cough medicine has contained Merubium, or on the label, it probably says horehound. This one, I'm not sure what you know it as, Senecio. Now more often referred to as Brachyglottis. This is a shrub from New Zealand with its grey leaves, which means that it will put up with a lot of sunshine. Has tiny yellow flowers in the summer, but it's really for its felty grey leaves that it's grown. This particular one is called Drysdale, which is very grey indeed, as you can see. Another nice little bit there. I'll turn this around and we can look and find to see if there are any gaps. Again, some roses. Aren't they beautiful? So I'm making a slight mounded effect here by adding the roses in. When you want things to be exact, sometimes there are designs where you do need to have some foam. And so the designs I'm doing for you today, then this is the only one actually that has foam used. Taking some of these larger roses right to the edge of the foam, just so that they spread out. There we go. And I've also got a beautiful spray rose as well. Look at that. It's a beautiful head, which will cut down very well into its constituent parts. So these will fill in the gaps. Looking now to see where I need just a touch of that white or cream. And I think it's a bit there. And a little bit just there. Now from your view from above, that's probably looking fairly even. And well, it wouldn't be Christmas, would it, without a little bit of holly. And this is quite special holly because it's come from my garden. When I moved into my garden, which is now quite a few years ago, I didn't plant a holly because the gardening books tell you it'll be years before you can cut it. So I didn't plant one because I didn't think I'd be there that long, but I'm still there nearly 40 years later. And 10 years ago, I planted a holly. And so this year, after 10 years, I'm able to pick just 2 pieces for this demonstration for you today. You could, if you wanted to, just leave it there as a bowl for the centre of the table. But I suppose it really depends who you've got coming to lunch. I'm now going to add an extra layer into this with some glittered birch all the way around the edge. Slightly leaning out, as you can see. Taking care not to pierce those oak stems. Bit into there. I think I can make 2 of this, otherwise they're going to be just a bit too thick. And I still want you to be able to see through and see the person on the other side of the table. And to go in with that, I've got some of this birch from the ring that I started with today. And again, I don't want that to be too thick and too intrusive. Let's cut that down. And thread a few pieces just between, just to give it some height. If I've got them on one side, I need them on the other. And I think that is nearly enough. Still not trying to make it look too heavy. An ivy. This particular one is Hedera erecta. And again, it's a shrub in the garden, and it grows in a really upright fashion. And then when these stems get really tall and all the growth comes out at the top, the whole thing then just drops to the ground and then grows upwards again. To decrease the look of it, I'm going to take the leaves off of the stem so they're just held in a cluster on the very top. And that adds a little bit of visual weight into those very lightweight twigs around the end. And before we finish, over the middle, little silver threads just to catch the light. I suppose if you wanted the really coordinated look, you'll have this all over your Christmas tree as well. But that softens the look of those roses in the centre. The remains of the bunch of ornithogalum, and I'm just going to work out how long these need to be. I'm going to cut quite a bit off of that stem, and in fact I'm going to cut a little bit more as well. So these will take your eye right up to the top. I've also got some of my lovely roses left as well, so I can add those in. I think at a different height, to give me some variation, at a different height to the ornithogalum. And for this, I've chosen the roses with the smallest heads. And when I bought this one, I said, "Oh, please may I buy that glass bowl?" And the man said, "It's a punch bowl." And he said, "Guess what? This is what you get with it. You get the cups for punch." So that one has a light in it. And these two, again, have the painted oak and a few flowers. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, stay well, keep safe, Have a wonderful Christmas. And all I've got to do now is lay the table. Goodbye.